The Christian view of God is that God is salvation, right? The Bible says salvation is the gift of God. Now, for many years, I used to think that the Bible was saying that salvation is the gift from God. But no, it doesn't say that. Salvation is the gift of God. God is the gift. God is the gift. Now, we as human beings have the free choice of saying yes to the gift or no. So easy as God made it that all we have to do, no matter what the wreckage of our lives, no matter what the sins we've committed, all we have to do is utter the word yes. That's it. That's the only prerequisite for salvation. That does it. So if someone says no in the face of a yes and you may enter sign, and if God himself is salvation, to say no to God is to say no to what God is. That is my definition of hell. If God is goodness, purity, beauty, truth, and you say no to God, you are cutting yourself off voluntarily from those divine attributes by your own will. And what does God do? God merely acquiesces in your free choice. So, this is the simple paradigm. There are multiple tough cases. What about the Hindu who's lived a decent life and has never heard of Jesus Christ? I'm not addressing those cases.
I noticed.
But I'm not ducking them either. I'm not ducking them. And I'm happy to address the issue, because here I think we have a different question, which is, the Bible says clearly that Jesus is the only way to salvation. And I believe that. Some people interpret that to mean something else. All those who have not explicitly accepted Jesus go to hell. That is one possible interpretation of the other statement, but not the only one. And in fact, there are many Christians who do not interpret the first statement in the Bible to mean the second statement, which is an interpretation of the Bible. Therefore, if you were to ask me, what happens to the guy in Papua New Guinea who's never heard of God or never heard of Jesus? My answer is, I don't know. I leave that to God's infinite mercy and justice. But no, I'm not declaring that that guy goes to hell, because I'm not sure that Bible statement A leads to interpretation B. My turn. Do we have time? Okay.
One last question.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
One last question. It's all yours.
Suffering ultimately is not an intellectual problem. It's an emotional problem. If you lose a child, you might wonder why, but really, your main concern is to alleviate the suffering. How do I feel better? How do I have this wound bandaged and overcome? So here's my question. Who has a better practical remedy for suffering? The Christian who can say this to someone, you've lost your son, but you have the hope of an afterlife in which you'll see him again. Offering genuine consolation to a bereaved person in that circumstance. Or an atheist who says, stuff happens. You've lost your son. There's no explanation. There's no remedy. Get over it. As a practical matter, who has more resources for coping with suffering? The Christians, who started the Red Cross, innumerable organizations to alleviate suffering? Or atheism, which basically says, this is the world as it is?
Yeah, actually my view of this, you might be surprised to find, isn't going to be your view. I think easy answers in the face of real suffering are cruel. I think when you have your son commit suicide, or your daughter get killed by a drunk driver, or your wife die because of an aneurysm, that the simple comfort of, don't worry, they're in heaven now, really doesn't go very far. I think it's a platitude that, in fact, I find offensive because it doesn't take seriously the real nature of suffering. And I'm, frankly, throughout this entire debate, I've been puzzled a little bit by what seems to me almost an intellectualizing of the problem on your part, that you can kind of solve it by coming up with clever answers. And this just strikes me like a slogan. I think that the way you comfort somebody is you do what the friends of Job did when he was suffering. They didn't give him platitudes. They came up to him and they sat with him in silence for 3 days. You show your human support for a fellow human being. You put your arm around the person and you tell them that you feel for them and that you love them and that you're there for them. And in my opinion, that does a world more good than a platitude about the afterlife.
Well, Bart, let's look at this for a moment, because that's a very revealing statement. None of us knows what comes after death, right? You haven't been to the other side of the curtain.
No, I know, but you just said you did.
No.
You said
No, I didn't say I did. I said you are offering someone
earlier
the hope.
you talked about people living forever in the afterlife, having suffered here, and now you've just said that this person is in heaven.
I said it's a central proposition of Christian theology, which it is.
And you agree with it, don't you?
And I agree with it on the basis of revelation, but
Well, okay.
I want to come to your point. As a matter of reason, engaging you as an agnostic, right? Here we have death. It's the final wall or curtain. None of us have been to the other side, right?
There is no other side.
Well, there's something that comes after death, whether it's life after or nothing. But what my point is, we are not in a position to know.
Something is not nothing.
Either there is life after death or there isn't.
Yeah.
Can you think of a third option?
There's no other side. That's a nothing. That's not a something.
All right.
You wrote a book about it.
The point I'm trying to make is that you are declaring to be a platitude something that is very much an open question, a real possibility. In other words,
and you're admitting it's a possibility you don't even agree with.
No, in a normal debate, if we were debating the existence of God, the burden of proof would be on me, because I'm saying there's a God, and I would need to prove it. In this debate, the burden of proof is on you, because you're saying there is an inherent inconsistency between Christian theology, the Christian God, all-powerful, benevolent, and the framework around that God, and the reality of suffering. So I am perfectly permitted to say, okay, let's see if there is this stated inconsistency. This theology posits the afterlife. I don't have to prove it. I'm simply saying, once you look at the full framework, the inconsistency disappears.
Yes, you've intellectualized the problem.
That's why we're having a debate. But I don't mean to imply that suffering doesn't remain a deep problem or a deep mystery. The point I wanted to make about life after death is there is something in human nature that longs for life to go on. Cultures throughout history and all religions have posited the afterlife as an arena of cosmic justice. Now, they could be making it up, but they could also be right. So why would you dismiss a real possibility which gives real hope and real consolation as a platitude?
Because it is a platitude. You're saying it's okay.
What's a platitude? Is it a statement?
The platitude is that you have just told somebody whose daughter was killed in a car wreck that it's okay because she'll be in heaven now.
I don't think I said it was okay. I said that despite the intensity of this suffering,
this does not provide comfort.
It has for millions of people through history.
It's created enormous guilt as well. It's created terrible suffering from people who think that they shouldn't mourn somebody because, after all, it was God's will.
It's created pain for people who feel that their mourning is inadequate because they should be actually mourning more.
Most people feel like, if my child is in heaven, then it should be okay. Well, it's not okay.
If I may. Our first question, which each of you which each of you will get